the Epstein file saga, the Epstein record saga is just beginning as far as we're concerned. And hopefully we are able to engage in litigation that gets the release of records in a way that reassures the public that a full and complete search has been conducted and the records fully evaluated and released to the full extent of the law. The deep state is going to object to any significant disclosures that embarrasses it. You know, one of the big issues is the Epstein files, right? Epstein was a pedophile. He died in prison. Most significant federal prisoner, managed to, quote, commit suicide, unquote. I don't believe it was a suicide. I think there's a lot of reason to believe it wasn't a suicide. And the concern is there were folks involved with Epstein that are still out there politically in positions of power and influence who haven't been held fully accountable for engaging in the same type of conduct for which Epstein was eventually charged, which is sex trafficking. I don't know, I don't recall the specific charges, but allegations concerning sex trafficking, statutory rape, kidnapping, things like that. And supposedly there are records that detail the names of other individuals involved. Now, do those records exist one way or the other? It's unclear. We've asked repeatedly for records. We've been getting the runaround. We may sue. And there's been a lot of pressure on Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, to release this information. So they had an effort to get ahead of the issue by releasing what I guess binder number one, I think it was called, or part one of Epstein records to some select, I guess the best way to call them is influencers. I don't mean to insult them like that, but these are folks who are, all of whom are fine patriots. Lives at TikTok, Benny Johnson, our friend, Mike Cernovich, who else? DC Drano, Rogan Hanley, another great guy, and a few others. Of course, we didn't get the documents, which is strange. But, you know, my concern is that that type of release, it's always useful to release records. To be clear, I always want records released. But it's it's the equivalent of a public leak. So if you don't release the records pursuant to FOIA, this doesn't mean you don't release records unless there's a FOIA request. But if there's a FOIA request, what happens is when you release the records, you have to start disclosing to the requester, okay, here are some records. We're withholding information for reasons A, B, and C. There are a certain number of pages we haven't turned over. And that's the process. And that way, the requester has a better understanding of what issues are still going on with respect to secrecy. So that's what I would recommend the administration do, kind of follow the FOIA process. And there doesn't have to be a FOIA out there to disclose that type of information. So I would encourage them to kind of be more regular in that regard. But that all being said, there's significant public interest in the Epstein files. Now, we had sued back in the day for records about Secret Service going with Bill Clinton on some of the flights to Epstein's Island, right? And as I recall, I guess I should look it up. The records showed that the Secret Service weren't or wasn't on any flights with Bill Clinton to Epstein's Island, which would have been strange. So, you know, kind of another mystery that I would hope is cleared up by this administration. So, to be clear, much better transparency. I like the proactive approach of releasing the information to a group of people who have broad access to social media and public to get the information out. But you know, because we're expert in analyzing what documents are, how they're presented by the government, whether there's questions that should be asked about whether there was a complete search and whether there are records being withheld improperly or unnecessarily. So I want more of the latter as well. We've got to kind of do deep dives on the Epstein files, and Judicial Watch is prepared to do that. I think we're going to file a lawsuit soon on the Epstein files, because this process, we need some assurance that everything's being done that can be done to release the records. Now, Pam Bondi put out this letter that excoriated this FBI's office in the Southern District of New York in New York, which is the U.S. Attorney's office there, for supposedly finding just recently or pretending to find just recently and then withholding potentially thousands of records related to Epstein. So who's running the show now, right? It's another example, if her letter is correct, of the deep state just doesn't want the truth to come out. And if there are legitimate reasons for withholding records, you litigate it, or you explain to the public what the reasons are. And so the Epstein file saga, the Epstein record saga, is just beginning as far as we're concerned. And hopefully we are able to engage in litigation that gets the release of records in a way that reassures the public that a full and complete search has been conducted and the records fully evaluated and released to the full extent of the law. And for example, there's a lot of discretion in withholding information. I mean, they pretend, or the government would have you believe, oh, we have to withhold information. Well, that's not, some cases that may be true under law. A lot of cases it isn't. So we'll see what happens.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.